Oh my God, we're back again. What's up, everybody? Episode 5. I can't believe I just did that either. Here we go. Episode 5 of Convince Me. This is what happens when you watch us and give us a reason to keep making more episodes, but we do appreciate it. Be sure you're following us here on Facebook, checking us out every Tuesday night, 6 o'clock. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/convincemeshow. I'm Andy Rutherford here for episode 5, joined as always by Brian Bennett, Casey Elrod. Gentlemen, how's it going tonight?
It's good. You've already lost.
Probably deservedly so. Bennett, how goes it?
It goes well. It goes well.
Well, good deal. What?
For now.
For now.
Could change.
If you couldn't tell by the cheesy, lousy opening there, it's better than the first episode we did.
It might be.
Tonight, our topic is something that you might not have thought would be something we would cover. To be completely honest, not something I really necessarily thought we would cover before we got really desperate for topics. Yet, here we are. We are children of the 90s. Myself and Bennett, more true children of the 90s. You don't remember as much of them as we do. We have a pretty good recollection of the entire 90s. But if you're in that late 90s period, which would be like 4th, 5th, 6th grade for me, 1 year added to that for Bennett. Pop music really revolved around the emerging theme of the boy band. And it seems like there were a half dozen of them that were fairly successful in that time. But that genre, that boy band craze that was going on, the whole teen beat thing was really centered around two groups, those being NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. And it's hard to talk about one without talking about the other. The debate's been going on for nearly or over 20 years now of which one is better. And tonight, me and Bennett will try to convince Mr. Elrod of which one is better. I will be arguing for the Backstreet Boys. Mr. Bennett will be arguing for NSYNC. And Mr. Elrod will be making the decisions, although I am skeptical of how fair and impartial this decision making will be based on your history.
You have no reason to believe that.
You're right. I have a lot of reasons. But anyway, Mr. Elrod, we're going to start with opening statements. How are you picking which one goes first?
This is going to be a closest to the number tiebreaker.
Again?
Yeah.
So, in 2000, the NSYNC album No Strings Attached broke a record for the most copies sold within 1 week. It stood for 15 years until Adele broke it. How many records of No Strings Attached did NSYNC sell in March of 2000?
How one freaking sided of a question is that? Bennett's been doing research for this dadgum argument. Of course he knows the answer, and I have no idea.
Okay, well, there goes my whole opening and closing statement. So, all right, so we'll just go ahead and give your closing arguments, and we'll wrap this thing up.
My goodness.
Do you want me to guess, or do you want Rut to guess?
I'll let Rut guess. And if you get within 100,000, you win.
Yeah, let's just do that. Since I already know, let's do that.
Is it in the first month? Is that what you asked?
The first week.
The first week. $1.25 million.
2.42 million. Bennett, you win.
This is starting early.
Wow.
Just pull out a literal water hose if you're going to hose me from the beginning.
Would you like to go first or second, Mr. Bennett?
Oh, gosh. I guess I'll go first.
Okay. Convince me.
All right. Mr. Elrod, you're looking mighty good today, too, just to let you know there.
He doesn't need it.
Looks like you shaved. I can tell. Looking good. Okay. I got a question for you. What does NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Adele, and Eminem all have in common?
They've sold a lot of records.
They have. As a matter of fact, they all sold over 1.5 million in the first week. Those are the only four dating back to 91. The Nielsen SoundScan is like the industry standard for measuring these type of numbers. And of that, only NSYNC and Eminem are the only two to be on that list twice. And to go even further, going back to our opening question here to decide who gets to go first, of those 2.42 that they sold in the first week for No Strings Attached, 1 million of those came in one day. I tried to research. I couldn't find anybody else that sold 1 million copies in a day. When it comes to boy bands, you've got New Kids on the Block. I would maybe Hanson. I'd throw them in there. 98 Degrees, O-Town. Who am I forgetting? Oh yeah, a couple other bands, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. When it comes to all these boy bands, undoubtedly NSYNC and Backstreet Boys are the two greatest of all time. And tonight, Elrod, I will convince you that NSYNC is the superior boy band. This I promise
you. Ooh. Point for you. Andy?
Well, Elrod, I would tell you to quit playing games with my heart, but you're just a douche that's not playing games. You're just being straight up. I don't want you back as the mediator ever again when I'm arguing.
Oh boy.
2 points.
But I will start my uphill climb right now. Bennett says that NSYNC sold a whole bunch of albums, and they did. He gave you the numbers. I'm not going to repeat them, although that'll probably be some weird tiebreaker question you have at the end if I had to guess. But of all the numbers that NSYNC has sold, the Backstreet Boys did it first. The Backstreet Boys paved the way for boy bands such as NSYNC and all the B to C level boy bands. There are only two on the A level, and those are the two we're talking about tonight. As far as late 90s on, everybody knows New Kids on the Block is the best band group ever, but they're not in this argument. Backstreet Boys paved the way, and they've outlasted the rest. They're still making music to this day. They had a top 10 album, top 10 tour last year. They're the top selling boy band of all time when it comes to album sales. And they have what I'm going to show you tonight that you won't believe and won't give me any credit for, but our good viewers will likely understand when I'm done tonight, because I'm not speaking to you, Mr. Morrod, I'm speaking to our viewers. Backstreet Boys ultimately transcended the quote-unquote boy band mold, and the Backstreet Boys made boy bands cool for the first time. They paved the way for the rest. They've outlasted the rest. And the Backstreet Boys made it somewhat okay and somewhat cool for 30-year-old guys to be sitting here on a Facebook Live show in the year 2020 to debate the merits of their success. So tonight, viewers, not Elrod, I'm not going to convince him, but I want to convince you that the Backstreet Boys is the ultimate boy band of all time.
A lot of assault on the judge here. A lot of assault on the judge. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Oh, fighting back.
All right. So let's get into the meat of all this, shall we? In order to have a band, you got to have members. Now, I know some of the members of each, but Andy, tell me about the members of the Backstreet Boys.
Obviously, Mr. Bennett is going to have the biggest name in this topic. That's no denying. If there was one solo superstar to come out of all boy bands, Mr. Bennett will cover here in just a moment. But let me read you these names. A.J. McLean, Howie Doro, Nick Carter, Brian Luttrell, Kevin Richardson. A lot of you probably know those names. If you weren't a fan of boy bands, you probably don't know any of those names. But the Backstreet Boys are the absolute epitome of the idea of the total is far, far more than the sum of the parts. They are a group. They are forever bonded together, and it's not one carrying the other. It's top to bottom. They are the group. And when you look at those 5 names I just named, none of them have really stood out and done a lot on their own. Maybe Nick Carter, because his brother had a hit or two before losing his mind. So really, when we look at the individual members, there's not a lot I can really point out. But the Backstreet Boys are the ultimate example of the total far equals the sum of the parts. So I will take what's remaining of my time to tell a really cool story about one Nick Carter. Probably his most famous thing he's ever done on his own. Probably not. But the only time in my life I have been to Key West, Florida, Nick Carter was in town as well, as was Chip Kelly, oddly enough. And the only reason I found this out is because he was arrested for public intoxication 2 days after I left. And I thought, hey, Nick Carter of the Backstreet Boys was there when I was. That's really the only cool story I have as far as the members of the band, but the total is better than the sum of the parts. Now, Bennett's about to smack me in the face with Timberlake. Let's go.
He is, I'm afraid. Bennett, tell me about the members of NSYNC.
Okay. NSYNC, a little brief history. They formed in 95, 96 in Orlando. Okay. This guy by the name of Lou Pearlman formed NSYNC. You know who we also formed before that? Backstreet Boys.
Ooh.
So both of these bands came from this one guy. And then he got in a lot of trouble for money laundering and all sorts of other stuff. And
Yeah, I've record.
And he died in prison. So didn't work out too good for him. But that's just a little fun side story, how they're connected together, because everybody wants to always compare the two. So I thought that was kind of ironic that they even had the same manager, which is crazy. Anywho, the members, there is Chris Kirkpatrick. A lot of people know him from a lyric in an Eminem song. You have J.C. Chazé. You have Joey Fatone. Everybody knows Joey Fatone. And they had probably their biggest star, Lance Bass. No, wait, that's not right. They did have Lance Bass.
Wasn't that Adam Sandler movie?
It was. He's been in some other stuff. They had a guy, their 5th guy. He dated Britney Spears for a while. Guy from Nashville. Everybody loves Nashville, right? We love Nashville. None other than Mr. Justin Timberlake. There it is. Nashville. All right. I'm not going to go into too much in depth about the members. I feel like whenever I think of members of Backstreet Boys, I remember Brian Luttrell, and I remember Nick Carter, and the other three I didn't really remember the names. But when you go through NSYNC, you know JC, maybe. You definitely know Justin Timberlake, maybe Chris Kirkpatrick. You definitely know Lance Bass, and you definitely know Joey Fatone. So I feel like NSYNC as a whole, you know a lot more about these guys. It's like they had the bigger name to them. Like they did more outside of NSYNC. Now I'm gonna take the rest of my time to give a kind of little cool little story too. I guess you would say the founding member of NSYNC was Chris Kirkpatrick, of all people, who was a Backstreet Boys outcast. He did not make the cut to be a Backstreet Boy. So he goes back to Mr. Lou Pearlman and says, hey, look, I still want to be in a boy band. So what's up? And he's like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take this mold and we're going to make a second one. We're going to do it bigger and better. So they go on the recruiting trail. First one they recruit is Mr. Justin Timberlake, who at the time I think was like 15, 16 years old, who'd gotten his start from the Mickey Mouse Club. So Mr. Timberlake, boom, you're on board. Then JC and Justin Timberlake had worked together before. They'd done some demos before, and they actually had kind of worked together in Nashville. And so Justin was like, hey, let's bring JC on board. Boom, now we got three. Now the trio goes to Orlando, and they find Mr. Joey Fatone in Orlando. I don't know how they found this guy, but boom, there's their fourth. Then their fifth guy you think is Lance Bass. Wrong. There was a guy before Lance Bass. There's this dude by the name of Jason Gillesso, who was originally the fifth member. And so they're getting ready, they're working on this album, they're getting ready to be a certified star. And this guy's like, I don't want to do a boy band, I want out. So he bails on them, which was probably not a very good business move on this guy's part.
Probably not.
So he bails. So then they're like, okay, well, we need a fifth. So they picked up Lance Bass. And the interesting thing about NSYNC, a lot of people think they got the name NSYNC because they were all like NSYNC, but really the name NSYNC is the last letter of their first name that made up the initials. But that's when they had old Jason Gillesso. So they had to nickname Lance Bass Langston just to make it to fit, which I thought was really weird.
All right. Thank you. Let's talk about some songs. Bennett, tell me about the breakout song for NSYNC.
Sure. Really, NSYNC kind of got their start like in European countries. They toured over there first before they became big in the United States. Their album NSYNC actually released first in '97 in like Germany, and that gave them like I Want You Back, Tearing Up My Heart, Here We Go, which are all three great songs, but I don't think that's what their breakout song was. I think it wasn't until their second album where we got No Strings Attached, where we got the song Bye Bye Bye. That I think is their breakout song. Yeah, everybody knows the Bye 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 thing. You do this right here and everybody knows you're talking about NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. This was released, I think, around like early 2000. It was a huge, massive success. It peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it remained on the top 10 for 12 weeks, which is pretty crazy. The song was the most added pop single to the radio all time and was added over 200 radio stations in 1 week, which is impressive just for the United States, but it was even bigger overseas internationally. Australia, New Zealand, it was at the top, and also number 3 in the United Kingdom. Also, too, not just the song, but the music video was also like groundbreaking for the time. They had a really huge presence in music video stuff. It's been credited as one of the most iconic music moments of the 2000s, and Billboard critics ranked it 21st among the greatest music videos of the 21st century. It was a 2000 Teen Choice Award winner. It won Best Pop Video, Best Choreography, Viewer's Choice, and was nominated for Video of the Year, Best Group Video, Best Dance Video, and also was nominated for 2 Grammys and Favorite Song at the Kids' Choice Awards.
All right. Andy, tell me about Backstreet Boys' breakout song.
This would be much shorter minutes, but because he covered a lot of the same points in the sense of, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys basically started by the same guy. Followed this model that NSYNC followed is the same model that worked for the Backstreet Boys. Their first album, their self-titled album, was released overseas, pretty much released everywhere except the United States, in Canada, and actually reached them top 10 on those charts, even as high as number 1 before they ever got here. They actually had 2 albums released internationally before they released an album in the U.S. Then they released their self-titled album in the U.S., kind of with some steam behind it. And really the first single they released, I think, let me double check this before yes. The first single that they released in the United States was actually the first single they released internationally. That was We've Got It Going On. That reached number 8 on the Billboard charts. And really, it was the first of 13 straight top 10s in the United States as far as singles that the Backstreet Boys put out. Their first 13 songs they released went top 10. So really their first single they released here was their breakout song because it put them on the map and they kept growing. Arguably one of their biggest songs was their second release, which was Quit Playing Games With My Heart. The second song they ever put out goes to number 2, and then it's followed by 11 more straight top 10 songs. So their breakout, like I said, like Bennett said, they started overseas, but when they released in the United States, they hit the ground running. So really their first single was their breakout song, and We've Got It Going On. And then they dropped Quit Playing Games With My Heart. Arguably their biggest song was number 2, and that fueled the next 11 hits after that. So hit the ground running, kept going, still going, but I'm not going to win.
Hey, if you keep on, you might not. You might not. Both of you kind of touched on this earlier with the different songs, but tell me about the hits. Tell me about NSYNC's hits, or tell me about Backstreet Boys hits, Andy. Tell me about just the collection of hits that they put out.
All right. Well, I mentioned that they had 13 straight, and I'll just go through these. We Got It Going On comes out. That was the first one. Hits number 3 immediately on the charts. And actually, I lied. Quit Playing Games was their third single. So apparently, I'm doing like you did last week and just making up lies as I go. But no, I'll Never Break Your Heart, number 8. Quit Playing Games With My Heart, number 2. Anywhere For You, number 4. The first Backstreet Boys song I really remember, really the song that made them cool, Backstreet's Back, hit number 3 on the charts. As Long As You Love Me, number 3. All I Have to Give, number 2. I Want It That Way, their biggest hit, a hit that my 5-year-old child in 2020 knows the words to, because we may or may not have family Backstreet Boys sessions in the car, but it's cool because the Backstreet Boys made it cool. But I Want It That Way, my 5-year-old in 2020 knows it. Followed by Larger Than Life, number 5. Show Me the Meaning of Being Lonely, number 3. The One, number 8. Shape of My Heart, number 4. The Call, number 8. All those songs came out before they ever had a single that didn't make the top 10, and their next single made it to number 12. So it didn't make the top 10, but all those songs you remember. I Want It That Way is arguably, if you look at online polls, and you can find 800 of them and find one to match what you think is fair and accurate, but pretty much everyone you look at, there's one of two songs at the top of the ultimate boy band song. One, I'm sure Bennett's about to nail the crap out of, and he's already brought it up, Bye, Bye, Bye. But the other is I Want It That Way. Iconic songs that hold up to today, that don't, especially as you get into their later stuff that I'll get to in a minute, don't necessarily feel that poppy dance move boy band mold. But as they progressed, their music changed. They changed. They got out of that boy band mold and still found continued success. And even these early songs from 20, 25 years ago, not quite 25, but 20 years ago, like I said, there are 5-year-olds today that know the lyrics to the song. So they hold up. They're big hits, viewing audience, because the All Right's not going to give me the win.
All right, Bennett, tell me about the Backstreet Boys hits.
What about NSYNC's hits instead?
Yes, I've got.
Okay.
You know what I'm trying to say.
Rudd already covered the Backstreet ones pretty well.
He has.
For NSYNC, obviously, I'm not going to go too much into it, but Bye 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 is probably their biggest hit. Probably their like number one song that everybody first thinks of when you think of NSYNC hits. But they also had some other really good hits, and they kind of showed their diversity. One of their big hits a lot of people don't really think of right off the bat is Girlfriend, which featured Nelly off of their Celebrity album. It was their 6th release to hit top 10, and it won a Teen Choice Award. They also had a cool little song called Music of My Heart, which off the soundtrack of the movie called Music of My Heart, which, for all you scary movie buffs out there, was directed by Wes Craven. That's the only movie that he kind of did that's out of the horror genre. So that's kind of neat. That song was nominated for an Academy Award, and was also nominated for 2 Grammy Awards, and hit number 2 on the Billboard Top 100 Adult Contemporary Songs. So it kind of showed that they weren't just so much poppy and boyish. They kind of had a little bit of diversity to that too. Some of their other big hits that a lot of people do know is God Must Have Spent a Little More Time on You, which was off their first album. It was their first song to reach top 10. It came in at number 8, but it went to number 2 again on the Billboard Top 100 Adult Contemporary. They had Gone off Celebrity album that peaked at number 11 on Billboard Top 100, reached number 14 on the R&B charts, and was nominated for a Grammy. I Want You Back, that was their big international song. It was top 10 in Germany, peaked at number 5 in the UK, and peaked at 13 here in the United States. It's Gonna Be May.
It's Gonna Be May.
May, off the No Strings album. Surprisingly, it's their only number 1 song.
Wow.
It's also top 10 in UK. Great music video too. Tearing Up My Heart off their first album, their self-titled albums, NSYNC. That kind of helped break them into the US charts. And VH1 actually named it one of the top songs of the 90s. This I Promise You off No Strings album, peaked at number 5. Spent 13 weeks on the Adult Contemporary Top 100, and is kind of like a very, very cliche wedding song that everybody plays. Then they had, last one I'm going to do is Pop off their Celebrity album, which hit number 1 in Canada. It was top 10 in the UK, and actually got 4 MTV Music Awards. And honorable mention, I want to do honorable mention, here we go, because that was a good song, even though it doesn't really get the credit for it. Good song.
All right. Well, we've talked about the songs. Let's talk about the albums. Bennett, tell me about the albums put out by NSYNC.
All right. This isn't going to take too terribly long because they only had 3 of them. Yeah, ain't that crazy? They only had 3 albums. if you don't count that little Christmas album they put out.
Gotta count
it. Yeah, maybe 3.5. Okay, they had their self-named title NSYNC that came out in the United States. I'm gonna say around 97, 98, which I vividly remember going to Target in Rivergate with my mom. And they had back in the day, there was like a big, huge thing for like a big CD section, all CDs. My kids don't see that anymore. It's a shame. But I come around the corner, I think I was looking for starting lineups. And then I was like, let me hit the CD section real quick, see what we got over here. And boom, there was NSYNC stuff. And I was like, wow, what is this? Like, it was everywhere. They had like the cardboard cutouts, the posters, the CDs everywhere. I was like, this is amazing. So what did I do? Got the Chumbawamba CD. I remember. It's weird stuff you remember. But anywho, yeah, their NSYNC album, like I said, is probably around 97. It first debuted more like overseas in like European countries, and kind of hit internationally too in early 98. Notable songs off that is I Want You Back, Tearing Up My Heart, Here We Go, and God Must Have Spent a Little Bit More Time on You. This album sold 15 million copies worldwide to date. It's 10-time platinum. Album earned diamond certification in the United States and peaked at number 2 on the billboards. It stayed inside the top 10 for 30 weeks, which is over half a year. This thing stayed inside the top 10, which is crazy. The album ranks number 137 on Billboard's top 200 albums of all time. Then they followed that up, but that's pretty impressive. That's not too bad for a boy band. A bunch of Backstreet Boy rejects. Their second album was No Strings Attached. That came out in 2000, and this thing was like a game changer. It was a freaking record-breaking hit. I think Mr. Elrod said it sold 2.42 million copies in a week, which did set a record that lasted until 2015. Somebody named Adele had to come along and mess up NSYNC's glory, but that's okay. Notable songs on that is Bye Bye Bye, It's Gonna Be May, and This I Promise You. Chart-wise, the album debuted at number 1, obviously, and it stayed at number 1 for 8 weeks, becoming one of the longest-running number 1 albums of the 2000s. This one was only 9 times platinum, wasn't 10-time platinum, but it's okay. It was the best. It's one of the best-selling albums of 2000. It sold over 12 million copies. In 2000, it was ranked number 1 on Billboard 200 at the end of the year chart. So for the whole year, Billboard said, okay, yeah, NSYNC, boom, you're number 1 for the whole year. And according to Billboard, was the top album of the decade. And the album ranks 111th on the top 200 of all time, according to Billboard. Then they decided to follow that up in 2001 with Celebrity, which was their final album, sadly. Wasn't quite as successful as No Strings Attached, but was still really good. It was their second album to debut at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200, and it sold 1.8 million copies in the first week, which is the second best debut week sales in U.S. at the time. First also being NSYNC at No Strings Attached. So at one time, for 15 years, NSYNC had the number 1 and number 2 best-selling debut album, which is crazy. Notable songs off that is Pop, Girlfriend, and Gone, and went 5 times platinum and ended up being the 3rd best-selling album of 2001 and ranked number 9 on Billboard's 200 year-end chart in 2001.
Kind of stole your thunder on the No Strings Attached album, just a little bit.
Oh, it's okay. It's a very notable fact.
Mr. Andy, tell me about the Backstreet Boys albums.
Well, they had a few more than 3. And I'm not going to go into all of them. The Backstreet Boys in total, 13 albums, 9 studio albums, 1 live album, 3 compilation albums. Fun fact, they're the first group since a small little outfit named Led Zeppelin to have their first 10 albums reach the top 10 on the Billboard 200, and the only boy band, quote unquote, to do so. So they're pretty good at albums. Somebody is shooting fireworks in May and it's cold outside. Must be COVID warning flares or something. Anyway, sorry, got distracted. Anyway, their albums have been successful. I won't go through the details of all of them. I'll just hit a little bit here. Backstreet's Back, their first album that was universally released to the entire world at the same time. Really their breakout album, sold 10 million copies, and really for a boy band at the time, that was unheard of. The fact that the Backstreet Boys put out Backstreet Back, sell over 10 million copies, paved the way for bands like NSYNC, like 98 Degrees, like LFO, other boy bands to sell mass quantities of albums, because that just didn't happen. So like I said, the Backstreet Boys kind of paved the way for everything that was done. And then 1999 they drop Millennium, which is their coup de grace. 1.13 million copies sold in the first week, 500,000 of those in the United States alone on day one. This album was on the Billboard 200 for 93 weeks. So nearly 2 years. It was on the Billboard 200 chart. It was the top selling album of 1999. And just to show you the scope of this, take your mind back to 1999. Think of the biggest names. That's a big mind to transport. You can probably leave some of it here. Take the biggest. The Backstreet Boys was the top-selling album of 1999, beating out in 1999 names like Britney Spears, Shania Twain, NSYNC, Ricky Martin, the GOAT Garth Brooks, Offspring, Dixie Chicks, Limp Bizkit, TLC, and Lauryn Hill. That was the rest of the top 10 from 1999. In 99, those are huge names. A lot of those names still huge names today. But Millennium was the top-selling album of that year. It's the 5th best-selling album of the SoundScan era at 12+ million albums sold. That's their coup de grace. Another album of note, 2005. They take a little hiatus. They come back in 2005 with Never Gone, which honestly didn't have the critical acclaim as a lot of their other stuff, because it was what nobody was expecting. This is really where the Backstreet Boys broke that boy band mold, because there's a lot less poppy, there's a lot less R&B to it. There's not any dance beats on that album. It was completely different sound. It was an album made entirely of genuine instrumentations. There wasn't a single synthesizer used on the entire album. When you think boy band, a lot of times you don't think of the music. You think of the cool beat. You think of the dance moves. But this album completely broke that mold, going entirely with instrumentation, no synthesizers whatsoever. And then their last album, which reached number 8 on the charts in 2019, last year. 20 years after Millennium came out, they're still putting out top 10 albums as of last year. My wife has a copy of it sitting right over there. They went on tour. I bought tickets to the tour. I didn't go. I bought them for my wife, and she took her dad. But they're still putting out albums. They're still going on tours. They're still extremely relevant in their music today. In 2019, they had a top 10 album. So And then there are 10 albums I didn't touch on, but we'll leave it there.
All right, you told me about the albums. Tell me, Andy, about the legacy of the Backstreet Boys.
I've really kind of already touched all over it, but they transcended and changed the typical boy band image. It wasn't a bunch of good-looking guys just doing dance moves and singing catchy songs to appeal to preteen girls. Granted, they had some poppy tunes, they had some dance moves, they did appeal to preteen girls, but they went so far above and beyond that. And NSYNC did as well, but Backstreet did it first. They paved the way, and as they went deeper into their career, they proved that they were more about the music and the lyrics than just the catchiness and the cool dance moves. They have shown us what it's like to work as a group. Look at all the other boy bands. NSYNC had Timberlake. 98 Degrees had Nick Lachey. New Kids on the Block had Donnie Wahlberg. There is no one person of the Backstreet Boys that you can pull out and say is the star, because they broke that mold. Because with every other boy band, you can find a star. The group as itself is the star. It's not one guy carrying 4 other guys. I think that's their legacy. Their group that broke the mold. Not to mention, they set the bar, and no one has ever come close to the bar as far as longevity of a boy band. 20 plus years going, still going today. I think it's breaking that mold and longevity and success throughout that longevity is what the legacy of the Backstreet Boys is.
All right, but tell me about the legacy of NSYNC.
NSYNC goes down as one of the most successful, call it boy bands if you want, but just in group in general of all time. What they were able to accomplish in 3 albums rivals that of others that have been doing it 4, 5, 10, 20 plus years. They had 3 American Music Award wins, 5 Billboard Music Awards, 7 MTV Music Awards, 8 Grammy nominations, 2 Diamond certifications, and a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. All that in just 3 albums. One thing about NSYNC is they knew how to appeal to their target audience. That was their whole thing. They took that and they ran with it. They influenced not just other boy bands, but pop music in general. Even today, there's a lot of people that get inspiration off NSYNC and do NSYNC covers. They've stayed relevant too, because on Facebook every year, April 31st, we get the "It's Gonna Be May" meme. Is that right? April 31st? Or is it 30th? 30th. There it is. One of those. I guess you wouldn't get on April 31st. That'd be weird.
That would be weird.
Anywho, then also every Christmas we get the Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday song that I know everybody listened to this past Christmas. That's their jam. Of all the Christmas music that comes on, as soon as that one comes on, I don't care if it is NSYNC, that's my Christmas jam. What NSYNC did was take that molding that the Backstreet Boys had, that they did pave the way, but they took that and they elevated it. They did it bigger and better, subjectively, but I think so. But one thing I want to touch on too is everybody thinks they know who the star of NSYNC was. You could say it was Justin Timberlake, but let's go back and look at it. Yeah, Justin had the look, you know, he had the Britney Spears girlfriend, all that going on. But if you look talent wise, JC was the best of them. Vocally, he was better than Justin Timberlake. I don't know what happened to where Justin became the one, but JC was set up to be the guy. It was JC and JT that did the lead vocals, but the other three guys were pretty much backup dancers, I guess you could say. They did some vocals, but they're pretty much the backup dancers. What separated them, though, was that Justin was able to align himself with the right people. And once he left NSYNC, that's when he became a huge star. Not necessarily so much when he was with NSYNC. You kind of see it happening where he was starting to go that way. But NSYNC as a whole, they never did get out of that poppy, boyish thing because that's what a boy band's supposed to be. I think after that, when you evolve, you're kind of going more like a group, a man band. And NSYNC stayed with that poppiness, even though it was a very short career. But that's what their legacy is. They had, you know, they had the look, they had the sound, they had the dance moves. To me, they were like the ultimate boy band.
All right. Well, it's my turn to ask some questions now. First question is for you, Mr. Bennett. Tell me why NSYNC broke up or never got back together.
Okay. Do you want to know why they broke up or why they didn't?
I guess both. Tell me why they broke up and why they haven't got back together.
Well, they broke up. I mean, obviously, we don't know what went on behind closed doors. We don't never know. And NSYNC's done a really good job of anytime any of them's been on any kind of interview, not so much Justin, he hasn't really done it so much, but like Lance Bass, Joey Fatone, and even JC, not so much Chris Kirkpatrick, but anytime they've been asked, you know, why they broke up, it's all just about, oh, well, you know, there was some differences. They never bashed one another or never said, oh, well, they want to do this, we want to do this, blah, 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 blah. But what I think the reason why they broke up was because Justin was starting to kind of come into his own. And I think we had people whispering in his ear, like, hey, man, you know, you're bigger than this. You can do better than this. And I think it finally got to him. And he lined himself up with some really good producers and some really good people like Timberland, who's a very, very, very good person to line yourself up with. And he took that and he just sort of kind of took off. So in 2002, they were supposed to take like a hiatus for a while, which has now been pretty much the code word for all boy bands, which means you're done. I think that's what One Direction did, was take a hiatus. And who's some of the other ones we have today? There's been a couple more that took a hiatus, and that was it. Jonas Brothers, they took a hiatus. But it was, to me, I think it was Justin. And then to answer the second question, why they've never gotten back together, it's because the success that JT's had. You know, why would you go back to that when you have all this other things going for you? By this time, he's like, by the time 2003, 2004 comes rolling around, he's a megastar. And then by the time that he does the scandal with Janet Jackson for the Super Bowl, by then, like, there's no turning back for him. Which, oddly enough, about that little Super Bowl incident, that kind of credited the whole YouTube thing. YouTube wasn't really a thing before that Super Bowl halftime show. And I'd seen something where this guy was getting frustrated because there was no way, because, you know, you heard about it, like, oh, did you see what happened? And if you didn't record it, people were trying to go and try to find out, oh, what happened? And there was no way of you just getting on your computer. You couldn't type in, you couldn't go to your YouTubes and type it in. It didn't exist. So YouTube was pretty much not solely invented for that, obviously not, but it was inspired off of it because needed something to where you could pull up videos, and it took off from there. But yeah, to get back to it, I think it's all been about adjusting. And too, by the time you get, I think, into like your early to mid 20s, like the boy band gig thing is done. Like you only have that short window, so you have to take the time that you have in a boy band and just do the best you can with it, and not try to drag it out over 100 years.
Well, that kind of leads into the question I was going to ask Rut about the Backstreet Boys. What do you say to the people, Rut, that say, you know, Backstreet Boys should have went the way of NSYNC 20 years ago and went on a hiatus? And what do you say to the people that will say, you know, being together consistently for 20 years has really stunted the growth of the members of Backstreet Boys?
I say you a lie. To those that say that they should have taken a hiatus, my question is why? They were successful. They paved the way, and it's not like they adapted to the times. They went with the times. They had albums that weren't as successful as their other albums, but there's never been a period in that 20 plus years where they haven't been considered successful. And it goes along those lines of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They made their name as a group. They put themselves on the map as a group. As times changed, Bennett's right. You can't do the boy band gig for 20 years. They changed their styles. They updated their style, but they did all that as a group, and were successful throughout that mission. So if it ain't broke, why fix it? That's why they shouldn't have gone on a hiatus, because they've had no reason to. There wasn't a breakout star amongst them that was going to see greener pastures. Their greener pastures are together. And I think they realized that. And when DNA hit top 10 last year in 2019, that was a good reminder of they're better off together. And as far as stunning the growth of any of their members by staying together, when you look at, and NSYNC is the prime example here, whether he was intended to be or not, Justin Timberlake was the star, and eventually that's going to break off. When we talked about Nirvana a few weeks ago, and you asked where would they be today, I said that wouldn't happen because there was no way Dave Grohl was going to stay in a background role. If there's a star, it's going to shine, and it's going to obviously shine eventually. I don't think there's a singles star in the Backstreet Boys, because if there was, it would have been obvious at some point in the last 20 years. There's not a single breakout star amongst them, so there's nothing being stunted. There's no growth being stunted, because that diamond, I'd say diamond's not shining in the rough, but it's not rough. They are the pressure that comes together that creates the diamond. They're better together. They're unstoppable together. It's much like going back to Nirvana and Alice in Chains. And some people probably want to shoot me for tying in a Nirvana and Alice in Chains argument with a Backstreet Boys and NSYNC argument. But I talked about Jerry Cantrell and Elaine Staley's vocals, how both were excellent vocalists, but together those harmonies could not be touched by anybody. These five guys, the Backstreet Boys, are pretty good, but when you put them together, they're the perfect ingredients to put in the bowl and produce the epitome of success as a group. So there was no growth stunted, and to anybody thinking that they should have took a hiatus, you're stupid.
I'll tell those people they were stupid when I see
Tell every one of them. I'll fight every one of them, said to Riley Cooper.
Okay. That brings us to closing arguments. Bennett, who's going right now?
I'll go. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me why NSYNC is better than the Backstreet Boys.
All right. I'll admit, I like the Backstreet Boys. I like them a lot. I think they have better vocals. They've been around longer. They did sell more albums. They've been around for 157 years. So they're going to sell more records. Now, bear with me on this. I'm going to make a couple of comparisons, and please don't shoot me for these comparisons. But, there it was. Okay. Backstreet Boys are like Tim Duncan. They get the job done, and they're really good, but they're boring. They're boring. They're good, but they're fundamental and they're boring. NSYNC is like your Deion Sanders. They're good, they know it, and they show it off. They're flashy. It's like I said before, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys came first. They paved the way. They did pave the way. But NSYNC took that and then they elevated it. They added to it. They pretty much set the standard from there on out for what boy bands are. They had better, more iconic music videos. Thinking back to TRL, that might be before your time, Elrod. Do you remember TRL?
I was going to talk about that actually. You still
NSYNC dominated TRL. They had the bigger personalities, like the names. When you name off all these guys like JC and JT and Chris Kirkpatrick, Joey Fatone, Lance Bass, they're the big personalities. You recognize them. When all the Backstreet Boys were together, and you look at them, I recognize like Brian Luttrell, and the other ones, I don't know which one's which. I think I know which one Nick Carter is because he looks like a grown-up Aaron Carter. But that's it. Dance-wise, theatrical-wise, NSYNC was better. They put on the better concert with their theatrics. Their music videos arguably were better because they were more theatrical. They marketed themselves extremely, extremely well. There was NSYNC merch for everything. Like I said, like how that's still ingrained in my mind from 97, 98, going to Target and Rivergate and seeing the NSYNC stuff there. Even though they didn't get a sell today, like that's still ingrained in my mind now. You had like not just the CDs, they had the T-shirts, they actually had a Game Boy video game for NSYNC. They even had chapstick for NSYNC. Like they really, really, really knew how to market themselves. They were flashy. They were really trendy. Everybody wanted to know what NSYNC was wearing, what's Justin wearing. Do I need to put ramen noodles on my head because that's what he had for his haircut? Then you had Chris Kirkpatrick in the dreads for a while. They had the iconic songs that everybody knows. They have the iconic videos that everybody's seen. They have the iconic dances. Like I said earlier, I could walk up to Joe Schmo on the side of the road and do the little like this right here. And he's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, for sure. For me, NSYNC looked and sounded the part of what a boy band should be. And if you were to have to define in a dictionary what is the ultimate end-all be-all boy band, especially of the late 90s, early 2000s, I don't see how it couldn't be NSYNC.
All right. Andy, tell me why the Backstreet Boys are better than NSYNC.
Tell you why? Ain't nothing but a heartache. If you pick NSYNC, ain't nothing but a mistake. I'll tell you why. I never want to hear you say that you're an impartial judge. Stand by. Here's the thing. Bennett himself just admitted who the more talented group was, the Backstreet Boys. Do you want the sizzle or do you want the steak?
I want the sizzle.
You would. Here's the thing. The Backstreet Boys made it cool for a guy to like boy bands. In the late 90s, I was about in the 4th grade, and chicks were into this group called the Backstreet Boys. And if I wanted to get cool with the chicks, I had to get cool with the Backstreet Boys. And the fact that I jumped on that bandwagon, it was okay because everybody else did too. I know a bunch of guys that are musically inclined, they're music fans that would give all the credit in this argument to the Backstreet Boys. The Backstreet Boys did it first. They made it cool to like boy bands. Their longevity as far as the boy band genre will probably never come close to being matched. They're the epitome of what I talked about earlier. The total is far, far more than the sum of the parts. There are final three reasons I'm going to give you right here. Number one, in 2017, Tilt.com ran a poll over who was the predominant boy band. With over 60% of the vote, the people know that it's the Backstreet Boys. And I would say it would be even higher than 60 now because the Backstreet Boys have put out another top 10 album since then. That's point number one. Point number two, Bennett alluded to earlier, Chris Kirkpatrick was a reject. He wasn't good enough to be in the Backstreet Boys. There was a time a few years ago when Kevin Richardson stepped away from the Backstreet Boys for a little bit, and they worked as a 4-man group. There were other people that asked to be a part of the group to keep it going, 2 of which were Lance Bass and Joey Fatone, both of which were told, no, we would rather go ahead with the foursome than at a 5th. My point being, at least 3 of the 5 NSYNC boys were not good enough to be in the Backstreet Boys. And there's proof to that because 3 of the 5 were rejected at different periods for the Backstreet Boys. And then my last reason, the reason that I should win this argument. Hannah, bring the prop.
Oh, no.
Props?
Don't do it.
Sorry, my wife is slow. Look at this face.
Oh, come on.
Look at this face and tell me that NSYNC's better than the Backstreet Boys. You can't do it. Look at this little face.
Can't bet that no.
This is Dino's Convince Me debut. You're doing such a good job.
Sympathy won't
That
work
is why. Here's the thing, Elrod. They say it's lonely at the top. Right now, I want you to show me the meaning of being lonely. I'm done. Let's do it.
Okay. Well. Here's how I come down on this. When you go back to the opening, I like the way, Andy, that you went back and you told the history of how NSYNC is basically not an offshoot, but if you don't have Backstreet Boys, if you don't have the Backstreet Boys come first, there's no NSYNC. And there's nobody like 98 Degrees or O-Town or somebody like that. But when you look at the bands as a whole, I think NSYNC may have more talented members. I mean, look at Justin Timberlake. Look at Bass. Look at.
It wasn't good enough for the Backstreet Boys.
But here's the thing I've had to wrestle with. If you look at the hits, I mean, it's not even close. Backstreet Boys had more hits because they've got more years underneath them. But the albums, the hits, it's hard to go against that. And you did a very good job, Bennett, of making this a lot closer than I thought. And I want to tell you a story real quick on why I'm going to pick the Backstreet Boys tonight over NSYNC.
Another swerve, bro.
In 2000, you just alluded to TRL. And it was around the time that No Strings Attached was big on the radio. You had to call in and vote. I was always a Backstreet Boys fan. I didn't really like NSYNC. I tried to call. I couldn't get through, and it made me so mad that I felt like I was offended that I couldn't call in and vote for the Backstreet Boys and put them over the top because all of these people were calling in for NSYNC, and it has hurt me for 20 years. I couldn't vote. You made this a lot closer, especially 2.42 million records in 1 week. I don't think we're ever going to see that ever again with anybody. That's going to be a tall order, but I cannot believe I'm giving him the win. But I don't want it that way. But unfortunately, I got to have it that way.
My child's going to start singing if you keep that playing.
So, Rut, you have convinced me that the Backstreet Boys
Good job.
are better than NSYNC.
We've been dealing with some frost lately. Yeah, hell has it too. It's a pretty cold day there. Or I just picked me to win. Is the swerve coming now? Because you did this last time. Is it coming now?
Good.
Or now?
He wants to.
It's not.
Quit playing games with my heart.
You're holding a grudge against NSYNC because you couldn't get through.
What's the bigger deal here? That Elrod actually tried to call TRL, or that he's holding a 20-year grudge because he couldn't get through to TRL?
It's a 20-year grudge. I hope it feels good.
Do you hate the voice because Carson
Daly
Daly didn't answer your phone call 20 years ago?
I'm very offended that he didn't answer my phone call. But the fact
full
that
circle.
you were able to kind of take that away from it and make me think, NSYNC might be better than Backstreet Boys. That took a lot of effort on your part. That was really good. Really good.
I like Backstreet Boys better.
All right, guys.
There's the twist.
Plot twist.
Oh, me. Well, that will put a wrap on episode 5. Gentlemen, any closing comments?
I have a closing comment, okay? Since we're leaving. Bye.
All right, guys. Been any parting words?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, me. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hell has frozen over. Casey Elrod has given me the win. He's been convinced. Crazier things may happen next week. You never know. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for following us. Make sure you follow us here on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Spread the word. We're so thankful to have you guys. We hope we can keep doing this. Keep showing us some love. We'll keep doing it. And I guess we'll see you next week when we're back. Until then, peace.